line we just put in.
It was a total fire ban day. The temperature was forecast at 42 degrees here in Canberra, or 41 degrees, and it was hot.
We were aware it was going to be a bad day. We were watching the smoke columns, we were watching the weather conditions pretty closely. At the time, this fire had been slowly creeping towards the west, but if a big strong southerly change comes, then it's going to make a very, very big strong run to the north.
The Currawong fire, which was burning to the east, had really taken a run, and they were actually worried that Braidwood was going to burn. The messages that we were getting through, because of the way the winds were blowing that day, they were saying that Braidwood was under direct threat. I was on the foam truck, Rivers 1-2 Charlie, and at about 1 o'clock we got a call to say that Braidwood needed us urgently.
We didn't know what the job was, we just had to start heading out. So when we got to almost Braidwood, we were told, now you're going to Nerriga.
New South Wales emergency bushfire warning: Nerriga, Tudor Valley, Northangra, Monroe, Charlie's Forest, seek shelter as fire arrives.
They were putting out these warning messages, which I'd never heard before. They were preceded with this siren type sound over the radio, and somebody saying that a prior cumulus cloud had developed over the Currawong fire, and there was lightning and storm conditions being observed, and they had requested all crews to withdraw from the fire and to basically that life was the first priority.
And we realised as all the radio calls were coming in that it sounded pretty serious. It sounded like they needed a lot of help.
With the weather the way it was going and the way the fire was progressing, I think everyone just needed to get to Nerriga as soon as possible.
We set ourselves up in a little cul-de-sac off the road. I thought this is a safe refuge, and within about 5 minutes it went from blue skies to an absolute inferno just surrounding us. We let that go around us for, I don't even know how long it took, maybe 15-20 minutes or so. And then we all started just heading down driveways trying to look for properties that needed help, and we got a call from the DivCom to say that everyone would be needed up at Nerriga.
It was really quite eerie coming into Nerriga because it was starting to get quite dark. It was mid-afternoon, but the light had gone dark.
Once we got into Nerriga itself, it had become quite noticeably darker. There was a pretty intense orange glow. We weren't just dealing with a run-of-the-mill kind of grass fire coming through. This was a pretty big event.
What time is it? What time is it? Is it daytime? It is 5:35 p.m. When does the sun go down?
Within half an hour, it just turned black, like scary black. It could have been the middle of the night, but it was dark. It was suffocatingly dark.
And it just got progressively darker and darker until it was pitch black.
It was completely black. You know, middle of summer, it's not meant to be completely black at that time.
Yeah, Hall Command, gun going on my mind, Charlie. We've now got burning embers dropping into the paddock, nothing catching at this stage.
I couldn't believe that we had a sunset. It was completely pitch black, and then after the fire front had gone through, the sun came back out for another hour or two.
You know, in that sort of environment, you know, the skies just turn black. You don't know what's going to happen. It's pretty unnerving.
We had a bit of a briefing from Matt about what to expect, how we were going to deal with certain scenarios, burnover situations, those sorts of things, which also made me question at one point, what the hell am I doing here? It's madness.
Brendan, I want you to be operating the pump. Yep, I'm going to sit down that side. I want you to be here. Okay. Right. Yep. We want to stop the fire from advancing across this paddock as best we can. Okay.
And we didn't even have time for a briefing or anything else. The message was, get your trucks out in front of the pub in the paddock. So our objective was to stop the fire coming across the paddock and hitting the pub and other infrastructure.
We were lined up with a lot of other ACT RFS and New South Wales RFS vehicles, probably 200 metres from the road, across the grass, but also maybe 100 metres, 200 metres away from the bush itself. And we just waited.
Gonna come through here hard. If anything goes bad, just rip that nozzle on.
Yeah, do you want me to go? Do you want me to go full?
Full fan, and just get down. Okay.
Even though it was so noisy, everything was just evaporating into this wind. You could just hear the squeaking or the squealing off the dozer tracks, and it was just that, and they were just trying their hardest to put in these trails and to try and create a bigger break.
But remember, panic kills, so we're just nice and easy to go. Easy does it.
We're just waiting, we're waiting, we've got all these horrible messages coming over the radio saying this is dangerous, and it was just pitch black. Finally, you saw it just start. You could see through all of the darkness and the smoke, you could just start seeing some embers just whipping along the ground.
It was surprising how far away the fire was at first, but then how quickly it just turned from being something happening out there somewhere to now it's in our face.
And then it came, the fire just hit. We just chucked the truck in reverse and we ended up back out on towards the road where the Nerriga pub was.
As a firefighter, you're often close to flames, but this was sort of just coming out of the sky across the top of us.
And you could just see the heat coming from the forest of the fire. Embers were coming across. You could see the fire as well as that. Just this raw heat. I didn't know that's what fire could look like, really.
And the cow pats in the field were actually catching the light, not the grass. So you'd see these little cow pats burning everywhere, but the fire actually didn't race through the field.
Across the grass?
Yeah, received that.
It was like the ember attacks were pushing the fire front through ahead, and that actually worked out in our favour because it just burnt out that bushland a little bit before the main front got through to us, and we were lucky at the time that the grass didn't take.
The wind was just blowing from our back towards the fire. It was howling. Every time you tried to talk to the crews or try and give orders, it was just, your voice would just get travelled in towards where the fire was supposedly coming from. So it was just out of control. It was nothing I've ever seen before.
The wind wasn't coming out of the fire, the wind was coming from our back, so we were facing towards the fire front. You could hear cracking, and it took me a while to realise that it was thunder. It wasn't like a rumbling thunder like you'd normally hear when the storm's rolling through. It was just this bizarre cracking sound, and then that was it, and it was the thunder from the pyrocumulus above us. On that road,
It was so windy. I remember that because you'd get out of the truck and you had to put your goggles on because if you were facing the wind, you couldn't open your eyes. It was crazy. And the ash and the embers. So we were just on that dirt strip.
We then had a call across the radio saying that Molongalo 11 Charlie, could you go down to the old schoolhouse and museum and help Carl Waller 7?
I'd always wanted to go into that museum and I'd never had the chance. I thought I'll never get the chance if we don't at least have a go at trying to protect it. And there's a little cleared area around it. It is doable. It won't be very nice, and it wasn't. But it's worth a try to try and protect that. And I know people say lives, you can't replace lives, but you can't replace history either. And pretty much all of their history is concentrated in this one little site there. So we set ourselves up, and I think we probably had less than half an hour before all the signs started coming. The blackened leaves started falling around you. So
it was a quick chat, work out who each other were. We thought we'd be on the side of the fire, or the fringe of it. We ended up being in the fire front, as we've worked out. So that 20-minute prep time that we had turned into a firestorm reasonably quickly.
Nerriga Schoolhouse. Carwoola and Molonglo unit from the ACT, Carwoola from New South Wales. And here it comes. Huge ember attack coming across. That's in the direction of Nerriga Township. There's other units up there.
We had everything ready. The fire came jumping across the highway into the trees, flames 60 metres high, or more, probably above the treetops, and then everything just started to ember. Ember started to just rain down on us. We took protection behind some sheds and stuff that were there, came back out again.
And then all of a sudden it's just there. And it's incredibly intense. 50 metres away in the gully there's a little footbridge there, and 50 metres away the flames were easily twice as high as the trees, and you just would have been dead if you were just there. But 50 metres further back and it's okay.
Not fear wouldn't be a word, but definitely concern of what we were going into and how we were going to manage getting out of it with what we were seeing being burned around us. And we all knew that our entry in was our egress out as well, so we all knew that that was going to be cut off at one point. So once we had all determined that, we sort of knew that we're going to be in for the long haul and see how we're going to come out with the fire burning around us.
One of the most stressful parts of the night for me was the historical museum. They'd been there for a little bit, and then we get a call saying that they were surrounded by fire.
There is fire on all sides of us at the moment. There is fire in front of us, behind us and beside us.
Tipperary.
Molonglo 1-1 Charlie, make sure you guys are in a safe spot where you can protect yourselves. If you guys need to get out now.
We're way past getting out, I think.
Hearing that was pretty stressful, and just telling them, talking to them and making sure that they were okay. They knew what they were doing.
We're way past getting out, I think.
And as we all know, as firefighters, topography and all those things and winds can change the fire in the blink of an eye. And that happened that day, where the causeway that all the tankers drove across to get into the town, that just basically made a big funnel for that fire front and just drew it straight to where we were all standing. The fire front probably lasted 20 minutes, half an hour, and within an hour it had consumed everything around us and was gone.
The fire's still going, so we got tasked to go out into the nearby properties and protect houses where the fire was still yet to go through.
Location approximately 100 metres ahead of you, just letting you know over.
Yeah, acknowledge, we can see that one too, thank you.
Everywhere you went, there was just fires impacting, there's all these little cul-de-sacs with houses, and there was just fire everywhere, but there was just nothing you could do. There was just not enough trucks and too many houses under threat.
The fire front came straight at us and then went to the bushland either side of us. So some crews were heading out to either side. I know that the museum had crews having to work pretty hard to keep the fire away from that. For us, we were able to then withdraw and head back towards town and start chasing the fire and to provide property protection. So we ended up just moving along to a house that was just off the main road. The embers had set a light around the house, and so we just made sure we put foam on the house, made sure we provided that property protection to keep it cool.
the owners there were trying to hose down their house, so we just joined up with them and we just got the hose, the foam going, and we were just covering the house with foam. As this almighty fire, the noise and the wind, it was just, and the darkness, it was just horrendous.
The homeowner was there, so we just helped them. And then once the fire had calmed down a little bit, we put it out around the house and then moved on again.
We managed to save that after it felt like an hour or more of just being subject to this fire. It was just everywhere. It was out of control.
At that point, the fire had well and truly moved on. So then we were just tasked to go and do clean-up operations where we, if someone's grazing property had a line of fire through it, so we'd head through, put that out, move on to the next one.
We had all the firefighters lined up in the pub, and there was a lady giving us food, some beautiful spaghetti bolognese. And we're all lined up as firefighters, and she was serving us. And I said to her, "Oh, how are you going?" She said, "Oh, I think I just lost my house, but I'm fine." And there she is serving us. So it sort of really, almost makes me cry, because here she is. She's probably just lost her house, and then she's serving us. And we hadn't really felt a bit, hadn't really done that much apart from turn up at that stage. And here she was serving us. So that Nerriga community are very special people, and like that really, it sort of, it touches me very much.
I'd never seen someone lose their home before that day. And I guess when we did have that break and we were ducking into the hotel to grab dinner, that they were making us, you saw a heap of families and a heap of couples and, just single people lying on the floor with blankets, and that's all they had. Like, they had just lost their homes. So that was pretty hard to see, particularly just from my position. Like, I was just there to help for an evening, and I felt like you couldn't always do enough for that sort of thing.
In the 27 years I've been in the brigade, I think that there's not many times, there's a handful of times that I felt like my life was in danger. This season had given me double what I'd received in the previous 25 years, where my life generally felt in danger.
So when we were coming back from that last tasking, we were heading back into Nerriga to just make sure we were all full of fuel and water and head back to Canberra. I don't know what time it was. It must have been 2 or 3 in the morning. And Tony was driving, Matt's in the front. I was in the middle seat in the back. And I just had my head lolled over to one side because I was pretty tired, just sort of watching out front. And the next thing I know, Tony's starting to hit the brakes.
Good. That was close. Good job, Tony. Good job.
And you just can't get to everything. And it's really, really upsetting. There was one house some days later. We'd actually had to go at protecting it after the main fire had hit. It looked okay. There was another house up the road. We protected that too. And then a week later I was driving past, and we must have missed it by about an hour. It had burned down. And I was so upset. That one place, I don't know why that one place in particular really affected me, but yelled at the driver, "Oh my God, stop, what the hell's just happened here?" We pulled over, and it was obviously miles too late. The house was a burning wreck on the ground, but it had burned around it already. Where the hell did this come from? I don't know, but it burned down, and that one really upset me.